Hey everyone, and welcome to 1.21 Gigawatts. I am Peter, and I'm joined as always by Matt.
Hey, let's get this dumpster fire year done with.
This is going to be our top 10 movies of 2016. We originally planned to sit down and debate over what our, 1.21's like collective top 10 is. Me and Matt were going to, go back and forth and debate and settle on a top 10 list that was this show's list. But then we realised something. We realised that our two top tens were so different that that was going to be nearly impossible, and it would essentially just be we'd have like 5 entries each, and that wasn't really kind of the point. So if we're going to have them separate, we're just going to have them separate. We'll do it properly. So what you're going to get here is you're going to get two top tens. You're going to get Peter's top 10. You're going to get Matt's top 10, and we'll alternate between them. You get mine, my number 10, his number 10, and so on and so forth until we get to the number one spots. And that way you get more recommendations, you get two different, opinions and personalities and favourites. It doesn't necessarily mean that all the stuff that he has in his top 10 I don't like and vice versa, but it does mean you get different passions coming from different places. Of course, we did review most of the movies that are going to be brought up throughout the year. You can find them on the channel. Go to the 1.21 Gigawatts movies playlist to find those reviews for extensive thoughts and spoilers. This will be spoiler free. Obviously, we're recommending things. We're not going to spoil them. Also, another sort of disclaimer. We haven't seen everything from 2016 yet, of course. I've actually got a couple of movies ready to be watched that are meant to be really good from this year, because there's always movies towards the end of the year that slip into the start of 2017 for everyone. I have Hunt for the Wilder People and Nocturnal Animals sitting waiting to be watched. So obviously they're not appearing on this list, but it's the last week of the year. We want to be timely about it. So here we are.
And I could say the same about Kubo and the Two Strings. It's the one
you watch. Yeah, we all have
animated
things
movie I didn't see. So,
Yeah, we all have movies we're starting to get around to, and I think there's just always this harsh cut off where no, we're doing the end of the year stuff. We're talking about what we've experienced actually in the year itself. So
what's funny last year? I'm sure The Revenant would have ended up in our top 10 or top 5, however we did last year, but it came out in that span of end of the year, beginning of the year.
It was the same with The Hateful Eight. The Hateful Eight was out at Christmas. So those two movies just completely ignored because they came out too late.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, tough. Release your movies earlier, you dumbasses.
Exactly.
My number 10 is actually going to be a horror movie, and of course, if you pay attention to the channel, you'll know that me and Tim did a top 10 horror movies on Screams After Midnight. You can check that out, of course. But this did appear on there. This is Don't Breathe. This is a movie about three thieves who break into a blind man's house, but the blind man ends up being like this military vet, paranoid, delusional. He has bars in the windows, and he hunts after the other characters, and it leads to a lot of great suspenseful moments where they're creeping around him, trying not to make any sound, where he's like discovering evidence of them being there, and there's a lot of fantastic stuff. There's a great sequence that's shot entirely in sort of night vision, where they're in complete pitch blackness, and there's like characters creeping out of the shadows and all that kind of thing. It's great.
It's tense.
It's tense as hell. It's twisty, it's turny, there's like plot revelations about halfway through you never would have seen coming probably, and it turns into just this excellent... It's a... People often use the roller coaster like metaphor a little bit too much when it comes to horror movies, but this kind of is exactly the type of horror movie that fits that example.
Yeah, slow climb, and then they push you off from the top and just watch where you go.
Yeah, so, pretty much.
I remember seeing it at the theater, and he gets to a turn, and a lady in front of me went, "Oh, hell no!" And so it's one of those type of movies where watching it with a group makes it better, but just it's so well made.
Yeah.
Fede Alvarez is, I want to watch his Evil Dead, but I'm kind of afraid of it.
Oh, you should. You should. It's great. Also really fun.
Yeah. Because the ad campaign creeped the crap out of me with her talking from the floorboards. I don't need that in my life. So...
Nah, this Don't Breathe is an extremely tight movie. It's very constructed, and one of my favourite things is it's a movie with a lot of rules. Like the setup where all the different things are around the house, so when the characters are trying to get to them, you know how far it is. It plays with its own rules, but it sticks to them. A lot of what I love about sort of high concept horror movies is in that movie, and I thoroughly recommend Don't Breathe.
In my number 10, this is where you'll see the deviations so much. Star Trek Beyond. I'm not much of a Star Trek guy, so to have this in my top 10 kind of surprised me. But it was a fun adventure flick, and kind of what I always thought the spirit of Star Trek was. And it's basically an episode brought to the big screen, just done with this new continuity.
It is
You
because
also get a
it's
yeah,
very much it's the most Star Trek of the three new movies. Like it feels the most like a Star
yeah,
Trek episode.
yeah, and you get more Bones and Spock and their relationship. And I've heard from a lot of my friends that like Star Trek is Bones is like a forgotten third member because everyone remembers Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, but they always forget DeForest Kelly was always big. So the fact that Carl Urban had much more to do in this one made for some great moments between him and Zachary Quinto as Spock. And plus the use of music in this one also was great. You know, you get that first trailer came out, really hyped me with BC Boys being used. Just all around fun movie, which I think you'll see a lot more coming up on my list.
My number 9 is Arrival, which is a science fiction film. So we're science fiction through line here from Matt's last entry, but
Huh?
this is the more kind of heady science fiction film. This is Denis Villeneuve who directed this, and it's an alien invasion where there's no guns or explosions or the world's ending and characters are running away
Yeah.
from buildings falling down. There's none of that. It's about trying to communicate and understand each other. And I kind of don't
Yeah.
want to say much more than that in terms of the plot, but to say that there is reveals, there's things to like, discover as you watch through the movie. Excellent directed, gorgeous visuals, great soundtrack, and a very important hopeful message, which is kind of like a throwback to science fiction movies of the 50s and 60s and stuff like that, where there was like a message of we can be better. This is, the human race can learn from other people. We can communicate, and communication is important. And it feels also very relevant in 2016 as well. So,
Yeah.
no, Arrival's great.
Rival is. I enjoyed that one. It's also very much Day the Earth Stood Still. In its, I feel there's some comparisons there, not just in the message, but just the way that they approached alien life and all that. There's a sense of awe, but a sense of danger
Yeah,
that
there's a lot.
really is
Yeah,
conveyed.
yeah, I think that's a very good way of putting it. Sense of awe and sense of danger. And of course, it's just nice when there's a movie with aliens and they're not just here to kill us. They're here to
Yeah,
actually
that's it's
help
always
us.
refreshing. So my number 9 is Captain America: Civil War, which was probably my favorite superhero movie of the year. So it was just basically everything that Marvel's been doing right just continued. The storyline with I always forget the actor's name.
Daniel Brühl, there you go.
Brule, thank you. Yeah, I think he's one of my favorite Marvel villains because he's so different in this and he's so understated. And he plays off of Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, so well in the last act. And they also had Black Panther running around and the Bucky Barnes stuff and the airport scene, the introduction of Spider-Man. Like, it was just everything I want a comic book movie to be in 2016.
My number 8 is Mr. Right, which is a surprising film this year for me because I didn't really know anything about it before it hit. It was Anna Kendrick and it was Sam Rockwell. He's a hitman. He starts dating her and she doesn't really know he's a hitman, and she's having like relationship troubles, and they kind of click and they have great chemistry. But he's a hitman, of course, and it leads to some great inventive comedy sequences with action mixed
Yes.
in. There's so much energy in the movie. It's written by Max Landis, and a lot of his humor is in there. He can be really hit and miss with his movies. Obviously, he's just a
Yes.
writer, and they can be, changed and altered by the director and whatever else. His humor is in there, and it is an extremely witty movie that plays in a lot of the tropes that you have, where you have, the damsel in distress, and it really did a lot to make Anna Kendrick's character really strong. Sam Rockwell's really funny. It's charming. It's relentless, and honestly, it's just one of the best 100-minute experiences I had this year.
So my number 8, we're still staying a little bit light, is Moana, the latest from Disney Animation. Best animation of the year, and I would say from Disney of the last maybe 3-4 years. I liked it a whole lot. I don't tend to like musicals, but here the music I thought worked really well, and it was done by Lin-Manuel Miranda from Hamilton, which I'm also a fan of, so that didn't hurt. But yeah, just story of a girl who's supposed to take over her island, but bad things are happening. She has to go beyond the reef, which no one can. and seek the help of Maui to right things. And it's just a really nice empowerment story. I think better than most that have come out through animation in a while.
My number 7 is Midnight Special, which is the story of a young boy who may or may not be an alien, and Michael Shannon, who plays his father, who is determined to get him where he needs to go, despite the fact that the government and this crazy cult are chasing him across the country on this journey to try and get him. You know, he has to be at a certain place and a certain time and a certain date, and they're trying to make this because he believes it's important. It's very much a sort of dark interpretation of maybe what an early Superman story might be. And Superman even plays a theme in the movie. You know, the kids actually sit and reading a Superman comic at one point, and they even talk about him. It's one of these science fiction movies where it's a strong character piece. It's about what the characters believe in, and having faith in something, and believing they're part of something more important. And it's a great sort of road movie where the characters have to be a little bit dark and a little bit edgy, but it leads to some of these fantastic, scenes of wonderment where the kid uses his abilities to get them out of a situation. You really grow and connect to the characters, and it all builds up to this very emotional, kind of surreal and beautiful finale at the end of the movie. And I think it's amazing to me that Warner Brothers can't seem to get Superman right, but they finance and release a movie like this that gets sure there's differences and whatnot, but there's so much of the core heart of it in there somewhere. It's just weird to me that this also existed. But no, this was a phenomenal science fiction film, and again, I think it was a good year for all these kind of throwback science fiction movies that weren't action films, that weren't there's an invading force and we have to have a third act, there's explosions everywhere. This was a lot more down to earth, and even though it did have what you might call an action sequence, it was small, it was lower key, it was smaller, but you cared more because of the stakes were high for the characters, and that's always more impressive to me than just saying, the world's at stake. Really, really strong, really, really well directed, fantastic score, great mood throughout, great atmosphere throughout, and I'd highly recommend Midnight Special.
So my number 7 is Green Room, the latest from, I think, Jeremy Saulnier. I can't ever pronounce his last name.
Well, I will say this, Matt. You finally went darker. Everything was light and fluffy from you until this one.
It was. And this movie is it's high on my list, even though it's one I probably never want to watch again. It's so dark and bleak, but at the same time, it's so DIY and punk rock. Like, the director nails that aesthetic from early on in the movie, where you see this band. So the premise, in case you're unfamiliar, is this band is hard up. They're playing the West Coast. They're this really grungy punk rock band, and they get a booking at a white supremacist club, and things go awry, and they get stuck in the green room. And just from the time they get to the club, you feel tense, just because the stakes, they're surrounded, and they're probably worse off if they come out of that room. So what are they going to do? So Patrick Stewart plays the heavy.
They witness something they're not meant to see. And from there, we essentially have this standoff situation with them trying to barricade themselves in this room, and it's just this really great tense thriller and like you say, Patrick Stewart comes in and basically just steals the show in a character that I've never seen him play before.
Ever, yeah. And Anton Yelchin is great. He was in Star Trek. I didn't mention that, but this is sad as it is, 2016's been that year. That this is probably his last great role. And this is as the lead here. So, yeah, Green Room, my number 7.
My number 6 is The Invitation, which is a sort of horror thriller movie starring Logan Marshall Green, who you can also see on the hit TV show Quarry, which not enough people are watching, so I'm just going to plug it right now because it was really, really good.
There you go.
And no one's ever heard of it. It was from Cinemax. But he's in this, and him and his girlfriend are invited to a dinner party thrown by his ex-wife. It's all his old friends. Him and his ex-wife had the same sort of group of friends from it was either high school or college. They all know each other. And the movie's essentially this paranoid delusion kind of thing where he keeps noticing things where he thinks something might be up, that there's some sort of malicious intent, but we don't know for sure. We don't know if there actually is something to worry about or if he's just being paranoid, and it builds that wonderfully throughout the movie. But it also has a lot of other things going for it where all the characters feel like real people. Like one of the complaints, because me and Tim did a 10 worst horror movies of 2016,
Uh-huh.
and one of the main complaints there.
Don't. I was gonna say, don't say Timmy put this on the tent
No, no,
on
no,
his
no, 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 he
worst.
didn't. He didn't. He
Oh,
didn't.
okay.
No,
Okay.
I'm using this as a point of comparison. One of the
Okay.
complaints that we had throughout a lot of those movies was that the characters were always really stupid, really two dimensional, and didn't feel real. This movie has some of the most real characters. Everything they say to each other, from small talk and beyond, you get a sense of history. You get a sense of, oh, they said hello that way because they have this comfortable nature with each other. Everything tells you something. Every little exchange tells you who these people are, like good character work should. And that's why the movie works so well. If that wasn't there, the movie wouldn't work. But it works so well because of that. Plus, it's expertly directed, fantastic acting, especially from the lead, and it is wonderfully dark and tense. And go in knowing no more than what I've told you, because you don't want to know what the last act is, because it is such a... what's happening, what's going on. You don't want to know what's going on before you start watching the movie. You want to let that ride take you over. So I'd highly recommend Invitation.
It just missed my list. I watched it on recommendation from Pete, and he just gave me the same spiel. Don't watch a trailer. Don't do anything. Put it on. Watch it, and it is worth your time. So my number 6, we're gonna veer into sci-fi territory with 10 Cloverfield Lane, which was the. Are we calling these the Cloverfield movies? They're set in a kind of vague continuity.
Honestly, the way I'm looking at it is, because we kind of know of a third one coming next year now.
Mm-hmm.
The way I'm looking at it is, it's kind of like a name for an anthology, and they're all kind of in the sci-fi horror kind of like world, kind of like how all the episodes of the Twilight Zone kind of fit together, but they're not really
so I was
together.
just gonna say,
it kind of feels like that, because it doesn't really feel like it's a sequel to Cloverfield.
No.
It's just
it shares some of the same things, but thematically they're not the same. And that's why I like this so much. When the first trailer came out, it was a surprise. I had no idea this was coming, and then the title came up.
It was like 2 months before it came out as well. It was really soon. They shadow dropped this. It was really impressive.
Yeah, Dan Trachtenberg, the director. He had Mary Elizabeth Winstead leading, and
John Goodman.
John Goodman, thank you. John Goodman playing the kind of the heavy, but kind of, he is the antagonist for the most part, and he traps Mary Elizabeth in a bunker because he's convinced the world has ended, and she wants out because she thinks he's just crazy. And it plays off their relationship and another guy that's down there with them.
It's a character movie where John Goodman's like kind of unhinged, but you're not sure how crazy he is.
Yeah.
And it kind of plays it from there. It's very much, again, much like The Invitation, it's paranoia. They're in a box, essentially, and it's paranoia playing out through it. I really liked it as well. It didn't make my top 10, but I also really liked it. My number 5 is a Korean film called Train to Busan. It is a zombie movie set on a train where this...
Let me guess, to Busan.
To Busan, that is correct, yes.
Which... Nailed it.
Now I know a Korean city. I wouldn't have been able to tell you what a Korean city was called before. Now I know one.
Yeah, I know Seoul.
Oh yeah, I've heard of Seoul.
That's about it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But now I know Busan.
That.
Yeah, so it's about this father who's taking his daughter back to her mother, and this happens to be when the zombie outbreak hits, and we're left with him, his daughter, this other ragtag group of characters, a guy who I was referring to in our Screams After Midnight review as the Korean Steven Seagal, because he whips out some fantastic action moves at one point.
Oh man.
So there's some great set piece moments. It's a great, again, I love bottle movies and bottle stories, and because it is mostly just set on the train, and them having to deal with the fact that some of the cars on the train are filled with zombies and they have to get through them. It plays with its own rules. It's got its own established rules for zombies that it introduces. There's some fantastic tense sequences with characters creeping around. What I really love about it, though, is A, it's got really strong characters. B, it has a very good, strong social commentary, a very good, strong message that I think is well worth people. Like, I'd almost say it's worth showing this to kids, because it would teach them something if it wasn't for the fact that it was a zombie movie where they're, violent and all that. So number C. Yeah, I said number C. Yeah, deal with it, people.
Thanks, Buzz.
The villain in this, there's an antagonist character who is just this slimy guy who constantly tries to put other people in danger so he can save himself. The last time I remember hating a character and wanting them to die this much was the religious character in The Mist. If you've seen that movie, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. This was the same kind of emotion that it was evoking, where I was like, I hate this person. I want him to get his face eaten off as quickly as humanly possible. He is awful, but in a good way, because they make you hate him. You know, it's not because he's
Right.
badly acted.
Well, it's
or
all
whatever.
earned.
Yeah, it's earned.
Yeah.
If you wanted a good zombie movie, if it feels like it's been a while since we've had a good zombie movie, I think Train to Busan probably fills that void. It's probably the best zombie movie since the first Wreck.
My number 5 is Hell or High Water, which is a modern crime. I almost called it a modern western, but me and Pete disagreed about if it's really a western as much as a character piece. So I'll call it a modern western character piece.
I didn't disagree. I was just
Yeah.
lukewarm on the term, but yeah.
About two brothers trying to save the family house by robbing banks, and Jeff Bridges plays like the marshal that's trying to bring him in with his partner. And it really spends the time with the brothers and the marshals, and you get to know them really well and really care for these characters. Jeff Bridges is just tops. It's probably my top performance of the year out of anything. And that's saying a lot because Ben Foster is also fantastic in the movie. And so is Chris Pine.
Yeah, they're all good. It's very much two sides of the same coin. Like, you have the brothers on one side, and then you have Jeff Bridges and his partner on the other side, who are essentially brothers as well. And it shows you that kind of relationship in both sides of the same fight, both sides of the law. And it kind of compares and contrasts throughout, which I think is its biggest strength, is the way it does that.
Well, it allows you moments with the characters. Like, there's numerous diner scenes that don't seem to play into the overall like forward-moving story, but it lets you know these characters. Like when Jeff Bridges and his partner go to this little diner, they talk about how people only order the steak there, and there's only been one person to ever order the fish, and that was like in 1986.
And they got
and
kicked
that lady
out.
knows because she worked there. Yeah, and she kicked him out herself. So you just get like a little slice of what it's like in West Texas and Oklahoma, as these guys are robbing banks and the marshals are tracking them down.
My number 4 is The Nice Guys, which is the new film from Shane Black, starring Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling, and also I'm not going to say her name correctly. Anna Jury Rice. I have no idea how to say it.
I've been saying Angery or Andrew. I don't know. It's the girl from The Nice Guys. That's just basically it.
Yeah, Ryan Gosling's daughter in the movie is phenomenal. She basically steals the show, and it's one of these things that Shane Black does when he directs this as well, but he wrote this, and he's written a lot in the past of these buddy cop movies where he puts in a kid character, and his kid characters are so well written, and they do steal the show. And this actress comes along, and she's in a movie with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe, and she's the one. I mean, they're great, and don't get me wrong, they're fantastic. Yeah. Ryan Gosling especially stealing the show as well himself, but every time she was there and she was dropping her witty lines and she was fighting her dad on stuff, it was just a lot of fun. But the movie's extremely witty. It is a fantastic throwback from like buddy cop movies from the 70s and 80s. It has that kind of plot. It doesn't try and play up into like a modern blockbuster sense, which might bore some, teenagers or whatever, but I don't care. The movie's great. No. The movie's fun. It has,
and it's funny. Like, it's
really
legitimately funny. Yeah, I gave it a rewatch over this Christmas break, and I found myself laughing just as hard, and I knew some of the jokes that were coming up. Yeah. So it's fantastic.
It's definitely my favourite comedy of the year. And a year where I've actually been really impressed that there's been enough comedies that I can have like a top 5 comedy list if I was going to make one. This is my favourite of those. No, I thoroughly recommend The Nice Guys. It's funny, charming, relentlessly paced. You never feel like it's moving slow. The plot is almost not important. It doesn't matter what the plot is. It's about these guys interacting. It's about his daughter coming into it. It's about them bantering, and even when they're the stakes are high and they might all die, they're still bickering with each other and dropping just fantastic lines where you're there for the ride, and it's immensely rewatchable.
So speaking of Ryan Gosling, my number 4 also stars Ryan Gosling, but also Emma Stone, and is directed by Damien Chazelle. It's La La Land, which is probably the most un-Pete movie I could ever watch. It's a modern musical, and it's even shot in CinemaScope. So from the time the movie starts, it's like these. All I could think of were the aspect ratios, thanks to Pete and his lessons.
Do you know what? I'm so glad that
yes,
you go to see La La Land, a movie that I would never go see because I don't like musicals. and all you can think about is aspect ratios because of my influence. That is
Yeah. Well,
warms
it
my heart.
starts with shot in glorious cinemascope, like the movies of the late 50s, early 60s.
Ah,
These
okay.
bright colors and titles, and you notice the aspect ratio. It's this big, wide, it doesn't look right, and the movie plays up to that where it's somehow, even though the characters drive Priuses and have iPhones and work at a modern coffee shop, it feels like a throwback to these romance pictures, of Gene Kelly and Ginger Rogers. And there's a dance sequence that really mimics that. But then the music, which shouldn't be a surprise coming from Damien Chazelle, who, made his name known with Whiplash. The music plays a big, huge section in this. And there's really only one musical number that drove me nuts because, again, I don't hate musicals like Pete, but I see them as a deterrent usually. So I kind of went into this going, I kind of have to see it. But as soon as the first one kicked off, I was tapping my foot, much to the chagrin of the person next to me. Gosling's great. It was this movie that made me realize he's my favorite actor working right now, I
Oh my.
think. Yeah, so because he's so versatile, because I had just watched The Nice Guys a week before I had seen this, and it's like the same guy playing completely opposite ends of the spectrum, and here he's the suave jazz pianist. In The Nice Guys, he's a bumbling private investigator. So I don't think they get much different. Emma Stone is fantastic. I didn't know she could sing. She has a pretty nice voice, but the direction's there, the music's there. It's a nice, delightful piece, and I'm figuring out a way to make Pete watch it, but. In order to do that, I have to lay on some grenades myself, and don't know if I'm willing to do that.
Actually, do you know what I picked up on there? I feel like
Hmm?
that is the third or fourth time one of us have said the word throwback whilst
Yeah,
talking about these movies in this video. And I think that's very interesting because I wonder if it's because blockbusters are becoming a little bit too repetitious, a little bit too
yeah,
formulaic, that we're hankering for a time when they did make all these different kinds of movies. And it's not like they're
yeah,
all throwbacks of the same thing. Nice Guys is a throwback of buddy cop movies. You're saying that's a throwback of,
yeah.
music and CinemaScope and all that kind of thing. And I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that we're looking at these movies and going, oh man, how nice is it to have just a straight
Well,
buddy cop comedy after all these years where
because
we've not
they
been
have
having
a
that.
different texture to them. As much as I love Captain America and the Marvel movies, they all kind of feel the same. And then you throw in all these like disposable blockbusters from this, or like Independence Day, like they feel cheap and disposable. Or
Because,
something like La La Land,
yeah.
like I made myself go see it because I liked the actors, and I'm glad that I did because it feels like there's a texture to it. It feels like a live thing where the other ones don't, because and I don't think it has to do with CG. I just think it has to do with the heart and the soul
Yeah,
that go
no,
into these.
I think it's to do with CG, but not directly. I think
Yeah,
it's like a proxy kind of thing where because CG's kind of had this influence in blockbusters where we can do anything in the third act. So almost every
Mhm.
third act in every big blockbuster now, there's a giant beam of light get into the sky, and the
yeah,
world's at stake, and we all have to, it happens all the goddamn time. So when you watch a movie like this, even though I have no interest in La La Land, it's a passion project, I'm sure, for the director.
yeah.
I'm assuming that they care about it and they pour their heart and soul into it. Whereas you go watch Independence Day 2 and you're like, some people in the boardroom, said, yeah, this will make some money. Let's sign off on this.
Yeah,
Committee.
yeah,
There's a
yeah.
committee involved. So
So,
yeah,
so I shouldn't say that La La Land ends with a big giant light in the sky and them driving towards it. So that doesn't happen. Maybe it
and
does.
is there
But
also bridges like rising up from the water like that? That happens all the time usually too.
maybe.
My number three is The Handmaiden, which is another Korean film. This is from Park Chan-wook, who is actually one of my favourite working directors. He has made a lot of great stuff. He did the Vengeance trilogy, including Old Boy, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. He did Stoker with
Stoker.
Nicole
Yeah.
Kidman. He's a fantastic director. I really like his style. And I actually didn't know what the plot of The Handmaiden was when I went in to watch it. It's a con man who's convinced this younger female con artist to be the handmaiden for this rich woman that he wants to seduce and like marry so he can take all of her money. So he convinces her to do this, but the handmaiden falls in love with the rich woman herself, and it's them having a relationship. And that's all I want to say, because everything from beyond that point is twisty and turny. It's actually very Gone Girl, not in plot, but in the way that like halfway through it kind of goes, but wait, there's this whole other side to this thing that you've not seen, and it goes back. And it's occasionally very funny in a really weird, like surreal kind of way, because that's what Park Chan-wook does. It's
Right.
occasionally very erotic, but always heartfelt. Whenever it does get kind of erotic, there's always emotion behind it, so it never just feels like, oh, this is titillating for the sake of titillation.
I think you
So,
just like saying that word.
titillation, yeah, it's a good word.
Yeah.
It's a really good word.
So would you classify it as a thriller, or
Oh, it's
is it a
kinda.
horror or just a
It's
drama?
not. It's not a horror. It's definitely not. It's
Okay.
I'd say it's a sort of black comical romantic thriller.
Okay.
That's-
That's such a strange classification.
But it doesn't feel like a super thriller. I'd say the biggest thing about it is you actually really care about the characters as the movie goes along, and you're rooting for them. But it's got that strange kind of wit that you sometimes you never really get this in a kind of American movie. It's a very Korean thing where they can have like a sort of lighter tone to something where there is these really dark things happening.
Yeah.
So I would highly recommend it if you're a fan of his movies. It's a fairly long movie. It's over 2 hours. It's about 2 hours 20, something like that. But you really care about the characters. There's great performances from everyone. It's really well directed. The pacing's strong. Like I say, full of really great witty moments, great set pieces. And when I say set pieces, I'm not talking about action. I'm talking about just you'll have a character overhearing something else. You'll have characters on different sides of the wall doing different, just really, really strong filmmaking. I really can't recommend The Handmaiden enough.
So my number three is going to be a direct divergence from something like The Handmaiden, and it's going to be like one of the biggest movies of the year. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. J.K. Rowling's first script for a movie. She wrote that. David Yates, I believe, came back and directed it. And it's the story of Newt Scamander trying to locate his lost animals in 1920s New York. As a massive Harry Potter fan, which is why it's so high up on the list, besides I really enjoyed it, it really fleshed out the rest of the world and gave a new perspective on what the American wizarding world's like. But in that, you get these new American characters, like Dan Fogler's Jacob, that almost steals the movie. When the time comes, it feels like a Potter book that you read where, yeah, the main character was cool, but what about this character over here? And the performances are all there. Eddie Redmayne's good. I mean, he's Eddie Redmayne. He kind of shows up and does what's expected. But the heavy, Colin Farrell. I almost forgot his name there. I thought he was equally as good doing what he does because he has to play this villainous guy that's also trying to play a good guy because he's a cop. So you don't know, is he really a bad cop? Is he that deep undercover? And I think Colin Farrell plays it up well. But Fantastic Beasts, Where to Find Them. I know Pete wouldn't be on his top 10 because Pete hates fun and likes Korean handmaiden movies.
I'm sorry, was Mr. Right not a fun entry for you?
It was fun-ish. I forgot you had that on the list.
That is there for pure fun. That was like the most fun I had this year. That was even
Take it back. Pete likes fun sometimes.
and the Nice Guys actually. That's pure fun as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, preposterous. My number 2 is Darling, which is a horror movie. Early on when I seen this year, it was really high up on my list right away. It's black and white. It's focusing on a single female character who takes a job as a caretaker at this old hotel, and the film's about her going mad. And is she mad? Is she really hearing voices, or is it just her going insane? And it does this great job of like constantly keeping you on your toes. It's a very sort of old school filming style. Like I say, obviously it's black and white, but even the music's very like sort of harsh strings, like an old kind of Hitchcocky type movie. It's very very intense. It really puts you in the place of the character who's very lonely and very like walled off compared to everyone else. So that when another character on the street comes up and speaks to her, you feel just as uncomfortable as she does. Wait, what are you doing? What are you talking to me for? Leave me alone. I'm on my own here. I hate people. Go away. I hate you. People.
I can do what I want because I'm eccentric.
I thought it was a great job of doing that. It's again a constant build, like a lot of good horror movies should be. It's a build and build and build of the tension and the rise of her own like psyche, like getting ready to erupt. It's like a volcano ready to go off until, possibly there's a violent incident eventually. I won't spoil anything, but it feels like it's going that way. And the lead actress does a fantastic job as well. She does that thing where it feels like she's looking at the camera sometimes, and in a very sort of intentional. I think in the horror top 10, I compared it to the scene at the end of Psycho when Anthony Perkins looks at the camera, where you feel like she's looking into your soul, and she's kind of like attractive, but she's also terrifying at the same time. It's they go against each other, and it
Right.
So
well, it's like it's Psycho. That's the whole point of him at the end of Norman. Don't touch a fly because he wouldn't even hurt a fly. It's very calculated. Because you're in his head. Which is totally going against the scary grin he has on his face.
Yeah, it's very much like, other people feel compelled to come up to her because she seems like this small, attractive, very unthreatening female, but she's actually like really dangerous. Like inside the head, there's really dangerous things going on, and you feel that as the movie goes on. And I think it's a really great sort of solo character piece. Not for everyone, very art house, I will warn you, but I loved it.
My number 2, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on. Star Wars Rogue One. Star Wars story. That's my title for it. Just let's be honest, it's number 2 because I knew it would infuriate Pete. Go back, watch our video. Not infuriate, more like poke at him. I enjoyed it, especially the third act. It really put me back to watching these movies as a kid, and it kind of just plays off of the nostalgia there. And I did like the characters, but the further away I get from it, the more I can kind of see the cracks and the spackle there in the movie, and the imperfections, if you will. Felicity Jones was good, but really it's Star Wars that shines.
I won't say a word. I shall simply say we have a 100-minute review that you can check out if you want to see my thoughts on the film. That's all I'll say. My number 1 is The Neon Demon by Nicholas Winding Refn, and I knew I was looking forward to this coming into the year. I expected to love it. I did love it. It was a visual and audio feast like no other.
I want to hate you so bad right now.
The cinematography in this movie is gorgeous. Like, it's just neon lighting everywhere. Like, if you love neon, there's neon coming out of
James,
everything.
I know you're watching this. He's talking directly to you.
Yeah. Seriously, every frame is so composed, and it's one of those things where people call it style over substance because it is plot's very simple. It's about a girl being kind of corrupted. She wants to be a model, and she's like kind of consumed by the evil modeling world of Los Angeles, and she's like in over her head, and that's kind of the plot. It's very simple, very straightforward. There is kind of slightly more, I don't want to say horror, maybe kind of horror, but like it's kind of, it sort of veers towards the end in a sort of direction, and that's fine. It sort of like takes like the metaphor and makes it a bit more real. But for the most part, it's a very simple, straightforward story. It's how it's presented that makes it wonderful. It's how it's shot, and where you feel that Refn's so like comfortable just sitting back with the camera and letting the action play out in front of it, because he'll make the room look gorgeous. He'll make everything look great, pop visually, and you'll let it happen, and he'll let the awkward silences between lines, tell the story and linger, and just build so much atmosphere. Like, that's what you feel the entire time. There's atmosphere and there's tension, and it does feel like you're watching a dream, like you're living through a dream-like state, because it is so stylized and it's not told in a straightforward manner. And yeah, I loved it. It was, cast are all pretty great. There's a message, a nice sort of like moral to the, vanity, like in the dangers of vanity and caring about that, and there's definitely that warning moral in there. So I think it's certainly worth something for that. But yeah, if you're a fan of good filmmaking, I think this is right up there in terms of visual filmmaking, especially.
Yeah, you sound like you're describing Only God Forgives, which I remember we had a big old disagreement on. I think it wasn't even recorded. We were just doing that one for fun. So, yeah. And I thought I liked Refn, but it turns out I just really like Drive. Movie, just,
This isn't as far gone as Only God Forgives. This is definitely
Okay.
this feels like it's right in the middle between those two. I would say.
Okay. Because Valhalla Rising had that dreamlike state to it too, where I'm watching it because there's Vikings and Mad Mikkelsen, and like it should be everything that I love, and I'm like, what is going on here? I I want to hit the out button. Someone wake me up. So
I also love
yeah,
Valhalla Rising. I had
no,
Neon Demon, uh, a magical experience. That sounds really pretentious, but it was. It was a magical experience where, from start to finish, I was just entrenched in this world, and there was no like getting out of it, and it was like it sucked me in, and I was just caught up in it entirely. I wasn't thinking about anything else. I was focused on the details. You know, some stories, some movies, when you watch them, you start thinking about other things. Your mind will drift. You'll be thinking about dinner. You'll whatever you talked about earlier that day. Whatever. No, even when it was quiet, even when there was no one talking on screen, and it was just visuals. It was just like a wide shot of something happening slowly. Like I was, my breath was almost just sort of like held a little bit. I'm just like I'm so
did you
into
see
what's
this?
going on.
Did you see this in the theater or was it a VOD?
Unfortunately, I could not see it in the theater. It was
Okay.
playing very limited around here, and I didn't get a
Okay.
chance to see it until later.
Gotcha. Okay.
But no, fantastic. Neon Demon, favorite movie of the year.
So this will show the difference between Pete and I. My number one is The Nice Guys, which Pete's already talked in depth about, and I really can't add too much more to what he said. But it's my favorite movie of the year because what Shane Black does with Ryan Gosling and Angourie Rice and Russell Crowe, it really is a three-pronged movie. They're all equally important to what's going on, and you care more about them than you do what the actual case is, which I forgot in between seeing it at the theater and watching it at home. I had forgotten what the main plot was. I had just remembered the character beats. The stuff of like Russell Crowe, walking up the stairs above the Comedy Store in LA to his apartment. It feels so noir, and then at the same time you get all these shots that look like 70s Los Angeles with the smog in the air and all the different like old cars that they had to have drudged up. It feels, again, we talked about throwback, but it feels like there's a texture to it. There's not this glossy sheen, which I used to look at movies like, let's say, a Michael Bay movie and go, wow, that looks great. It looks slick and it's shiny. But, sometimes there's fool's gold in those hills, and looks can only get you so far.
It's too shiny,
And
even.
exactly. And so Shane Black, by making care about the characters, it puts it up there on this different level for me compared to everything else, which my list was, I don't say blockbuster heavy, but it was big movie heavy. And, it stuck out. I really thought Rogue One was going to be my number one. And then I had rewatched The Nice Guys, and that's what did it. That's odd.
What I will point out, though, is Nice Guys is the only movie that we share on our two
Yeah?
top tens. It is the only overlap. And that's not to say that I don't like a lot of the movies you talked about.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the movies you mentioned would be in my top 20 or top 25.
Yeah.
They appear in there somewhere, but it's interesting that out of our two top tens, only one film crossed over, and it was The Nice
Yeah,
Guys.
and I think I only saw a couple. I saw The Invitation on yours, and Don't Breathe. I like those both a whole lot. But I'm trying to think what else. I think that's about it. You
Arrival.
definitely
Arrival and Mr.
Arrival.
Right.
Yeah, Arrival's top 15. That would in there, but and Mr. Right. So yeah, so there's not too much. I mean, you just watch a lot of different type of movies than I do. You like the world cinema aspect where I find my spot and stick with it. So, I like big bombastic movies sometimes. Also Pop Star. I see things like that. Pete goes and sees The Handmaiden.
The phrase you're looking for, Matt, is filthy casual. Well, that is both mine and Matt's top 10s of 2016. So that's 19 movies between us that you can have recommendations for. If you've been watching us for a while, you'll maybe have a better idea of whose side maybe your taste lines up with more. Maybe you have a bit of a mix, but you have a lot of things. Yes, Matt, you're raising your hand. That means you wish to speak.
Well, I was just there's a bit delay, so I left it up longer. But you had said whose side you're on, and I was raising my hand. You want to be on my side? I have cookies.
I have brownies.
Oh, God damn it, he beats me again.
Yeah. But yeah, let us know, of course, what your favourite movies of the year are in the comments below. We really like to hear. I think it'd be very interesting to see how they compare to ours, what have we missed, what's popping up, that kind of thing. What's really funny for me is this is the first year in a long time where I have no comic book movies in my top 10.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of a thing for me this year. I feel like, even Civil War, which was easily the best one, I was still kind of like, yeah, it was good, but I wasn't like super pumped about it. And I think I'm hoping that next year will be better in that front for me personally, which I won't talk about too much because one of the next videos we've got coming up is our top 10 most anticipated movies of 2017, so you can look out for that later this week. Also check out, like I say, the Screams After Midnight top 10 horror movies of the year with me and Tim, and me and Connor did a whole bunch of top 10 TV stuff for the end of the year. Top 10 new shows, top worst new shows, top 10 episodes, top shows of the year, all that sort of stuff. So check out all of the end of year content, which is on the Mail Fuzz channel. There's a lot of it, a lot of good recommendations to get from us. But other than that, guys, thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe and all that stuff. Let us know what your favourites are, of course, in the comments below, like I said. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a happy new year. We will see you next time.